discover the incredible lessons from my daughter-in-law that transformed my home of 25 years. Henry had always believed in the power of tradition. Hard work, discipline, and respect were the pillars of his family. But now, watching Jake and Lila prepare for their life together, he felt as if his very foundation was crumbling. Lila's vibrant ideas threatened his world, like a gust of wind that disrupted the carefully arranged leaves of his lawn. Each cheerful suggestion she made about raising children, facing challenges, or even decorating the house felt like a personal affront to him, as if she critiqued his entire way of parenting. Who did she think she was? A city teacher with her fancy ideas? Did she not understand the values that held their family together? When she smiled and spoke of nurturing emotions and embracing vulnerability, Henry's stomach churned with unease. It seemed foolish, almost dangerous to him. He couldn't shake the voice deep inside him questioning whether those city ideas could resonate in the small, quiet town where he raised his boys. The contrast was night and day. He bore the weight of years filled with sacrifice and expectations, while she danced through life with an audacious joy that irked him to the core. Was he outdated? Stubborn? The self-doubt curled inside him like smoke, threatening to engulf everything he'd built. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the months leading to the wedding, tension simmered beneath surface smiles. Dinner conversations became thinly veiled warfare, where Henry's stoic silence was punctuated by Lila's effervescent hopes. With every shared meal, he felt his control slipping, replaced by her quick wit and unyielding optimism. His inner anxieties deepened. He couldn't help but wonder if all his teachings would ultimately crumble at the hands of this new force. The festival of the wedding arrived, but it felt more like an impending storm front than a celebration. His layers of rigid beliefs tangled with fear, creating a gnarly knot in his gut whenever he considered her influence on Jake. Was he prepared to let go of his expectations? Accepting a life colored by Lila's ideals seemed akin to admitting defeat. Then came the phone call, the sudden family crisis forcing them all under one roof once again. With heightened tension in the air, Lila seized the moment to address the unspoken rifts in the family, initiating the kind of conversations Henry had spent a lifetime avoiding. Voices raised in affection morphed into a symphony of truth, revealing fears and resentment. A turbulent night unfolded as Henry wrestled with emotions he'd locked away for ages. He stood on the brink of transformation, caught in the whirlwind of vulnerability that Lila represented, while the ghosts of his past whispered with lingering doubt. Could he relinquish his steadfast grip on his beliefs for the sake of understanding? As chaos reigned and voices clashed, an ugly specter from Jake's childhood loomed large in the shadows, ready to erupt and tear the fragile threads of their newfound closeness apart. Henry's heart raced at the fear of what would happen when the revelations finally surfaced. Would he stand his ground, or finally embrace the change that felt inevitable? The air thickened with tension as the night dragged on. While Lila and Jake passionately bared their hearts, Henry remained entrenched in silence, suffocating under the weight of unexpressed emotions. He was a ship lost at sea, powerless against the waves of vulnerability crashing around him. Every assertion they made about emotional well-being and the need for honesty clawed at his chest, igniting a storm of resistance within. Who did they believe themselves to be? Challenging the very principles he had upheld all these years. Suddenly, Jake's voice broke through the muddle of Henry's thoughts. "Dad, don't you ever get tired of pretending?" The question hung in the air like a ticking clock, each tick emphasizing the walls Henry had built around himself. Jake was the son he had raised to be strong, to uphold tradition. Yet here he was, demanding Henry confront the very fabric of his existence. Henry's breath hitched. Pretending? Was it pretense to uphold the values of hard work and sacrifice? Or was it a deep-seated fear of being exposed as flawed, as human? He felt the heat rise in his chest, swirling with frustration and a sense of betrayal. He had given Jake everything, and now it seemed that everything was being scrutinized under the bright lights of Lila's sunny philosophies. "I'm not pretending," Henry replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I just know what works." "What works?" Lila countered, her tone gentle yet unwavering. "Look at us. Look at how we're all feeling right now. Are we communicating? Are we growing together, or are we circling the same arguments over and over?" For the first time, Henry saw the weight behind her questions. It was as if a mirror was held up to him, reflecting not just his beliefs, but the crumbling foundations behind them. He could hear the rhythm of doubt drumming louder in his ears. Perhaps the way he interacted with his family had been rigid, stifling, and perhaps he had expected blind adherence to a doctrine he now began to view critically. Yet the thought of change felt daunting. What would he become if he allowed this new approach to seep into his life? He felt the fear of losing his identity take root, a fear that now seemed to be the sole anchor in his turbulent sea. In the midst of this internal battle, the specter from Jake's childhood loomed larger. A memory surfaced, one he had buried deep. Jake, small and vulnerable, tangled in the struggles of adolescence, longing for connection while navigating the stormy waters of loss and other insecurities. Had he truly been there for his son? Or had he merely enforced rules without understanding the boy's needs? The realization struck him like a lightning bolt. Ignoring Jake's cries for emotional support, contributing to a sense of alienation, only fed into the cycle they were now desperately trying to break. He felt a deep pang of regret. The cost of his rigidity might have meant losing Jake's trust altogether, and with it, the vital connection he cherished. The moment passed slowly, filled with palpable quiet, as the room settled into a fragile peace. A decision brewed beneath the surface of Henry's consciousness, as the need for change emerged, not as a threat, but as a chance for deeper understanding. Strength was not merely about holding steadfast. It could also include the humility to shift perspective, stand up against years of ingrained beliefs, and choose to be vulnerable. "Maybe," Henry started, his voice quavering slightly. "Maybe I haven't been the father you both needed." The admission fell like a stone, creating ripples in the tension-laden air. As he grappled with the enormity of his words, a cascade of emotions washed over him. Would they accept his apology? His willingness to change? Would this moment of raw honesty help to mend the rift that had grown into a chasm? The silence that followed felt thick, pregnant with possibilities and potential pitfalls. The truth hung there, heavy, as his heart raced in anticipation of their reactions. Would they embrace this light of honesty, or turn away, wary of the shadows it might cast? Henry's grip around his heart tightened, knowing that the future hung precariously on this single moment. Would stepping into the light of vulnerability usher in a new dawn? Or would it mark the end of everything he had once known? The silence lingered, each passing second amplifying Henry's trepidation. He could feel Lila's eyes searching him, assessing the sincerity behind his admission. Jake, with his arms crossed defensively, seemed unsure whether to feel relieved by the acknowledgement or wary of its implications. The stillness shattered when Lila spoke softly, her words mingling with the comforting darkness surrounding them. "Henry, acknowledging that you haven't been perfect is a big first step. But it's just the beginning, isn't it?" He understood her point, yet the intricacies of practical application lay ahead like an uncharted path, rugged and uncertain. Facing the truth about himself was one thing. Changing years of behavior would be another trial altogether. What if he faltered? "I don't know how to be different," he confessed, his voice a tremor of vulnerability. "I've built my whole life on what I thought was right." "That's the thing," Jake cut in, his tone softer, less confrontational than before. "You don't have to change overnight. Just let us in. Show us the real you. It's terrifying, I know, but it's also freeing." Jake's words hung in the air like an invitation. Tempting, yet daunting. What would it mean for Henry to let his guard down, to face the flaws not only in his parenting but also in himself as a man? A sense of paradox swept through him. The principles he'd upheld had been his armor, but that very armor now felt heavy, cumbersome, and isolating. "What if I'm not strong enough to do it?" Henry whispered, his throat tightening with raw emotion. "Strength doesn't mean keeping everything in," Lila responded gently. "Sometimes it means asking for help, accepting flaws, and making space for change. You don't have to do it all at once. It's about the little steps." Her words sparked a flurry of reflections. What if the vulnerability he feared could be the source of renewed strength? Perhaps letting down his defenses wasn't a weakness. Rather, it could foster a deeper connection. A new framework began to take shape, one that was anchored in emotional honesty, rather than stoic endurance. In that moment, Henry's mental landscape shifted. Flashbacks of unspoken desires cluttered his mind. Small moments he had brushed aside, a yearning for connection that he had so often quashed in favor of being strong. He realized he had silenced his own emotions, which in turn silenced others in his life. "I want to try," Henry murmured, a flicker of determination igniting in the pit of his stomach. "I want to do better. To be better." Each utterance embodied both a promise and a challenge. It felt exhilarating yet vulnerable, like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. Jake visibly relaxed, his arms unfolding, revealing a glimpse of the son who yearned for authentic connection. Lila met Henry's gaze with a supportive smile, an encouraging gesture that pushed him to dig deeper into this newfound commitment. Had he finally reached the precipice of change? Yet, as Henry mulled over this promise of transformation, question upon question flooded his thoughts. How would he navigate the conversations that followed? Would he have the patience to endure discomfort as they shattered old patterns? And what if this venture into vulnerability provoked unforeseen challenges from his past he had intended to keep submerged? The weight of the moment was palpable, knotting the air between them. With this decision, the terrain of their relationships lay open, dangerously beautiful, ready to be reshaped. Behind it, a landscape of emotions lay hidden, the expanse of which had yet to be explored. Now, it seemed, was the time for Henry to uncover not just the depths of his past, but also the potential pathways into his family's future. But the question loomed larger than ever. Was he prepared to confront the shadows of his history while forging a way forward? As the echo of his new resolve hung in the air, Henry felt the stirrings of something profound within. The moment had come to face not just his family, but the reflections of his own past decisions that threatened to bubble up and challenge this vulnerability he had just begun to embrace. Henry sat back in his chair, the weight of uncertainty pressing squarely on his chest. The promise he'd just made, to try, to be better, felt akin to calling out into the void, a fragile statement clinging to hope. As Jake shifted in his seat, Henry sensed that he was no longer merely battling his own demons, but was now part of a collective struggle for authenticity within his family. What did authentic change look like? Could he dismantle the barriers he had carefully constructed over decades without losing himself? The questions haunted him, swirling like autumn leaves in a brisk wind. Breathing deeply, he deliberately anchored himself in the present, focusing on the tangible world around him. The familiar setting of their home remained untouched, but he sensed that within this very room, profound shifts awaited. "Okay," he finally stated, determination settling into his voice. "Let's talk. What do we need to change?" He could almost taste the vulnerability lurk in his words, but with it came a flicker of resolve. Lila exchanged a glance with Jake before she spoke. "It starts with honesty, Henry. You need to tell us what you really feel, even the uncomfortable parts. If we're to mend these ties, we have to dig deeper. Dig deeper." The phrase echoed in his mind. How far could he, and should he, delve into the depths of his emotions? It felt perilous, but he understood it was necessary. After years of avoiding the complexities of feelings, plunging into the depths seemed daunting. Yet the notion ignited something within him. Perhaps this endeavor was more about discovery than destruction. "I've always thought emotions made me weak," Henry admitted, the walls around him feeling more like old paint waiting for a fresh coat than a fortress. "I wanted to be the provider, the rock. I thought that was my role." "Sometimes rocks are just lonely," Jake said gently, allowing the hints of humor to diffuse the tension. Henry smiled weakly. It was true. His steadfastness had fostered isolation, barricading him from genuine communion. Laughter seemed an odd but crucial facet of their recovery, a way to bridge the chasm that had formed over the years. "Maybe it's time to rewrite the manual on being a father," Lila suggested, her eyes dancing with a spark of mischief. "What about sharing stories? Scary, funny, or just plain ridiculous?" The idea struck a chord. Stories were the threads that wove their familial tapestry together, yet he'd treated them like untouchable artifacts of a bygone era. "All right, let's try it. I'll start," Henry said, feeling the energy shift towards something lighter, yet purposeful. He leaned forward, recalling the time he had taken a leap of faith into a father-son camping trip. A body of water teeming with fish, one of which had thrown itself decidedly onto the rocky terrain of his own disbelief. Laughter bubbled freely as he recounted details, bordering on absurdity, grounding fatherhood in shared experience rather than expectations. As the stories flowed like a rushing river, Henry felt unexpectedly liberated. Each anecdote released a little more tension, pulling his family closer. Noticing Jake's expression, Henry realized that beneath the lightheartedness lurked deeper reflections of connection that had always been waiting for acknowledgement. Yet, even amidst his opening, insecurities whispered insidiously, reminding him of everything he still needed to confront. As the evening waned and stories ebbed, Henry's heart began to beat rhythmically with hope. This newfound connection created a foundation that could be nurtured, a fragile but essential bond, mending years of resistance. But in those quiet moments after laughter faded, doubt settled in, uninvited. What unresolved emotions would emerge when the light-hearted mask slipped? Would he still be able to navigate his desire to shield his family while facing his own tumultuous past? The air crackled with anticipation, and Henry could feel the weight of the uncharted territory stretching before him. Knowing transformation was fraught with challenges, a burning question ignited within him. What would each of them uncover about themselves at the end of this journey? With a mixture of unease and eagerness, he wondered if they were ready to confront the real stories that had shaped their lives, ready to embrace the shadows that lingered beneath the surface. The path ahead remained unclear, but one certainty echoed louder than ever. Change lay on the horizon, a change that demanded authenticity, courage, and above all, the willingness to engage with their shared history, no matter how painful it might be. Henry awoke the next morning with a tight knot in his stomach. The previous night's laughter still echoed in his mind, but it was swiftly replaced by the daunting uncertainties that loomed over his newfound commitment to change. The sunlight filtering through the kitchen window felt warmer, lighter. Yet the same sun had illuminated issues he could no longer ignore. As he brewed coffee, he wrestled with the complexities of authenticity that seemed to shatter the comforting routines of his life. He glanced at the family photo hanging on the wall, capturing a moment of joy. Their smiles now felt like a facade of the life he had constructed. What lay beneath Sipping his coffee, a wave of nervous energy propelled him forward. It was time to build on the promise of the night before, but he didn't quite know how to break out of the lingering cycle of silence and avoidance. Perhaps it was the stories that had opened a door. He sensed that more lay hidden within him. Just as he pondered his next move, Jake shuffled into the kitchen, eyes bleary, his presence startling Henry from his reverie. "You're up early," Jake mumbled, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about yesterday," Henry replied, choosing his words carefully. "I want to make things different, you know? Not just for us, but for you too." "What does that even mean?" Jake asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "It means starting with honesty. Today I want us to talk. Really talk," Henry emphasized, allowing some vulnerability to seep into his tone. "Okay, but you're gonna have to lead," Jake said, taking a seat at the kitchen table. A deep breath steadied him for this leap into the unknown. "I've realized I've held onto my emotions like weapons. Fear of being seen as weak kept me behind an invisible wall. I want to tear that wall down." As the words unfolded, Henry felt an unexpected exhilaration replace the anxiety. Here was an opening, an authentic conversational space. The words poured out, touching on moments he thought long buried. The pressure to provide, the fear of inadequacy, how he'd often prioritized work over family time, hoping to establish a legacy rather than connecting with the lives entwined with his own. Each revelation cracked the hinges of his stoic exterior, allowing light to flood into previously shadowy corners. "Do you remember what I used to say about my job being my identity?" he asked, shaking his head in disbelief. "What an absurd idea. I was so focused on being successful that I neglected to savor the time with you." Jake's gaze softened, and Henry sensed a shift. "I get it, Dad, but it's not all on you. I've had my own walls up," he responded, hinting at his own battles with identity. As if the floodgates had opened, they both began to exchange the secrets and regrets previously cloaked in silence. Each story peeled back layers, raw and human, revealing truths Henry knew he had to confront, not just for himself, but for Jake as well. He had long avoided this depth, instead guiding their relationship by surface-level interactions. It was refreshing yet frightening to lay bare their lives like this, vulnerable and unvarnished. In that moment, the kitchen transformed from a mere family space into a sanctuary of connection. History, resentment, fear, all began to mingle with possibility as father and son saw one another anew. They were not just stories, but narratives woven together, narratives yearning to be acknowledged and transformed. As the conversation meandered through paths of regret and understanding, a new realization lingered at the periphery of Henry's mind, beckoning him closer. There was so much more to share, so much still left unexamined and unexpressed. Yet the question remained, an unanswered riddle. How would they navigate the deeper emotional currents that would surface? Would they uncover the hidden complexities that threatened to pull them under, or choose to swim against the tide of painful secrets? The figurative door had creaked open, and just beyond it, an array of uncharted destinies awaited. The challenge lay not just in embracing the past, but also in contemplating their future, one defined by courage and connection. A new chapter loomed, one that would demand fortitude, serving as both an exploration and a potentially treacherous expedition into their hearts. What awaited them on the other side of that door? The thought was as thrilling as it was terrifying. His heart still raced from the vibrant exchange with Jake. Words lingered in the air like unspooled ribbon, each representing a thread of connection he had long neglected. Henry leaned back in his chair, his eyes focusing on the patterns of sunlight dappling the kitchen floor, pondering his next move. The morning continued to dissolve into midday, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of empowerment take root. Perhaps it was time to embrace further vulnerability, to invite uncomfortable truths to surface in unexpected ways. This shift was not just a conversation with Jake, but an invitation to co-create a new reality for both of them. With a fresh sense of purpose, he picked up his phone and texted Jake. "Let's meet tonight for dinner. Just the two of us. I want to keep this going." A few seconds passed before Jake replied. "Sure, sounds good. What did this mean?" Henry glanced at the fridge, 6 magnets holding up unremarkable reminders. The grocery list, a drawing from Jake at 10 years old, a couple's invitation to a wedding long forgotten. These small objects now felt like anchors, heavy with history but also vessels of growth. This pointed to something crucial: the evolution of a home, not solely in physical spaces, but within the emotional landscapes contained within these walls. The afternoon unfolded slowly, filled with mundane tasks that felt inconsequential. As he washed dishes, he mused on the dinner ahead. What might they unearth together? The gnawing uncertainty wrapped around him, yet strangely it was tinted with excitement. By evening, anticipation had thickened the air. Henry set the table with care, plating the simple meal he had learned Jake enjoyed. Cooking had become a minor ritual, a point of collaboration with Jake during meals over the years, yet it invariably circled back to small talk, brushing over the depth he now aimed to reach. When Jake arrived carrying a hint of youthful enthusiasm as he stepped through the door, Henry could see their previous conversations swirling around him like a cloak, a mixture of vulnerability and cautious hope. "Hey," Jake said, a soft smile forming. "Hey, I made your favorite." As they ate, the warmth of familiarity enveloped them, and just as easily as the memories rolled in, Henry felt the familiar walls closing in. It was his instinct to gloss over difficult topics, to steer away from confrontation. But he knew tonight demanded more. "Jake, I want to talk about something," he ventured, forcing the words past the barrier of his hesitation. "Sure, Dad," Jake replied, intent in his gaze. "This is hard for me, but I want you to know I'm working on being more open. It feels like I haven't really listened to you for years." Henry noticed Jake's look of surprise, an echo of his earlier skepticism. "I appreciate that, Dad. You know I've struggled too," Jake said, his voice steady but tinged with a vulnerability that mirrored Henry's. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken realities, each making their presence felt in the room. Could they traverse the rawness of those struggles together? Questions loomed like dark clouds ready to burst. In that moment, Henry could almost taste the tension, fear of how deep the waters ahead might be. His heart raced at the thought. This journey could reveal more than just hidden ache. It could establish newfound respect, understanding, and ultimately, love on a level that transcended their past. As the conversation began to unfold, threads intertwined with the struggle of authenticity, the world outside faded. Time lost its grip as the focus sharpened to the emotional exchanges flaring across the table. Yet a nagging thought persisted. How deeply would they dare to dive into the revelations? With a hesitant breath, they decided to confront what they had long avoided. Yet a specter from Henry's past silently crept, asking, what if this conversation diverged into realms they weren't ready to face? It was as exhilarating as it was terrifying, teasing out the possibility that the greatest changes awaited just beyond their current understanding. Would they find the strength to navigate what lay ahead? Or would their unvoiced fears shatter the fragile connection they were assembling? He knew it could veer in any direction, and with each passing moment, he felt the gravity of the unseen challenges weighing heavily between them. A decision loomed, one that would ultimately determine whether they could redefine their relationship or lose themselves in the depths of their insecurities. What secrets from Henry's past might surface with this newfound commitment to honesty? And would it shatter everything he thought he knew about himself and Jake? The quiet hum of conversation submerged in the comfortable atmosphere soon transformed into an apprehensive silence. Henry could see Jake's brow furrow slightly, a reflection of the same uncertainty flooding his own mind. He had crossed a threshold into uncharted territory, and each beat of silence felt heavy with potential consequences. Did he have the resolve to dive deeper? Dad, I appreciate you saying that, but you haven't really asked me much about what I'm going through lately, Jake said, his voice laced with apprehension. The last few months have been rough for me at school. A rush of emotions coursed through Henry. Disappointment in himself mixed with an insistent yearning to truly connect. This was the moment he had prepared for. Yet he felt fear whispering in his ear, urging him to retreat. Would he dare venture further into his son's hardships? You're right, Henry replied, struggling to maintain composure. I've been so caught up in my own struggles that I haven't been present for you. What's been going on? Jake hesitated, the tension in the room thickening, and Henry felt the weight of expectation layer over them. The unspoken, the hurt they hadn't dared to mention. It's just the pressure, you know, with friends and my studies. It's overwhelming sometimes. I just feel lost and I wish... He trailed off, gazing at the remnants of his dinner. The sight of his son's retreat into silence sliced through Henry's heart. Memories of his own feelings of inadequacy surged up, the boy he once was, flickering beneath the surface, aching to be understood. A lesser part of him wanted to dwell in the comforting illusions of detachment, but he pushed the urge aside. He needed to be the father that Jake deserved, not just the figure he'd been. I wish I could have seen that sooner. I'm here now, Jake. Whatever you need to say, I want to hear it. Henry urged, the tremor in his voice betraying the depth of his emotions. Jake let out a shaken breath, vulnerability spilling over their prepared boundaries. Sometimes I wish you'd stand up for me, like when I'm bullied in class. Or just check in with me like you used to. Henry felt his stomach twist at the revelation. The realization that Jake would feel defenseless, unchecked in the face of cruelty, stripped him of composure. It was a jagged reminder of his own failures, not only in parenting but in human connection itself. I didn't know. I was so focused on trying to be strong for you, I didn't see what you really needed. He admitted quietly, their eyes locked, a tangible bond forming from the unspoken pain of years. It felt like a channel to unknown territory had been opened, a place where secrets could evolve into clarity. Henry understood something fundamental at that moment. Authenticity sat at the core of every genuine relationship. This was his chance to model the courage he hoped to inspire in Jake. I have to admit something, he murmured almost hesitantly. For a long time I've been afraid to share my struggles with you. I thought it would protect you somehow. But I see now. It only pushed us apart. The words hung in the air, the fragility of shared truths inviting deeper dialogue. Jake shifted forward, his youthful eagerness beginning to ignite the space between them. Dad, if you felt that way, why didn't you ever say anything? That question slammed into Henry, reverberating through his mind. Why hadn't he? His parental instincts had traced a fine line between strength and vulnerability, but now it blurred. What kind of father would he be if they were both utterly honest? It wasn't just about you. Maybe I was afraid of being judged or not being good enough. I should have trusted you with my truth. Henry confessed, his heart thumping against the weight of exposure and the fear of not living up to his son's expectations. Jake considered the revelation, pondering the fragility of their shared experience. I guess we've both been scared of not being enough, he said slowly. Maybe we can help each other? Henry nodded, a smile of reluctant hope emerging through their raw exchange of reality. The prospect of uncovering deeper facets of their lives together stoked a newfound fire within him. But in the back of his mind, Henry knew this had only begun. What skeletons resided in his past, buried beneath layers of shame? Would his willingness to confront vulnerability enable deeper connections, or risk unearthing pain previously left untouched? As Jake leaned in, his father's heart raced with both hope and dread, eager for honesty, yet uncertain of the truth that lay ahead. The echoes of their intertwined complexities beckoned him to venture forward, into a conversation that could reshape the very essence of their relationship. With a strengthened resolve, Henry prepared to face the tempest of emotions rooted in their history, fully aware that the real challenge was still before them. How far were they ready to go into uncharted depths together? The air seemed to vibrate with unsaid truths, each word exchanged between Henry and Jake, carving new pathways in their connection. As the remnants of the dinner plates lay forgotten, their focus shifted entirely to one another. This moment felt vital, a turning point emerging from the ashes of misunderstanding. "Do you remember when you took me to that baseball game?" Jake began, his voice wavering between nostalgia and yearning. "You were so excited to teach me everything about the game, but I was just too young to get it. But I wanted to impress you, you know?" Henry felt his chest tighten. That day had been pivotal for him too, a chance to bond over something he loved. Yet, he had failed to notice how Jake's demeanor had shifted. Instead of sparking connection, it had induced pressure on the boy, pushing him into a role he wasn't ready to assume. "I might have been too focused on my own excitement, Jake. I didn't realize you were trying to be someone you thought I wanted," he offered, a pang of guilt pulling at him. "I've always wanted you to share my passions, but I didn't think about what you truly needed." Jake lowered his gaze, wrestling with an internal storm. "Sometimes it felt like I had to meet these expectations, like if I didn't like sports or the things you loved, I'd disappoint you." The truth stung. Henry hadn't meant for his actions to translate into expectations. Yet here they were, both navigating unfamiliar terrain, where parental love had unwittingly bred a suffocating pressure. "It was never about your interests aligning with mine. I should have accepted you as you are," he said, the resolve in his voice gaining clarity. "Where do we go from here, Jake? How do we navigate this hurt and make it constructive?" Jake took a deep breath, visibly steeling himself. "Maybe we could share our interests, but not demand it. I'd love to teach you about the things I'm into, even if it's not the same as baseball." Henry thought for a moment, recognizing this as a reciprocity he had neglected. They were standing on the precipice of a new understanding, a chance to redefine their relationship. "Okay, but we're going to have to take turns then. I'll share some of my stuff if you promise to share yours. Deal?" A hesitant smile creased Jake's face, the ambiance lightening for just a moment. Deal. Yet beneath this budding connection lay an undercurrent of reality. Jake's struggles at school still loomed. Henry couldn't ignore the fight for his son's self-advocacy. "What do you want me to do when you face those bullies, Jake? What do you need from me?" Jake's expression darkened. Pain etched across his brow. "I need you to be there, Dad. Maybe come to school with me, or just be someone who stands up for me. Not only when I'm feeling strong, but when I'm at my lowest." The request settled heavy on Henry's shoulders. His instincts recoiled, wanting to protect himself from the emotional risks involved. Yet he understood. This was the very essence of fatherhood he'd been avoiding. "You're right. I think I've shied away from being in those battles with you, afraid of what it would look like. But you deserve better. I want to fight alongside you." As the weight of those words sunk in, a sense of empowerment enveloped Henry. The possibility of standing beside his son, of unearthing his fears, ignited a flicker of hope buried within him. This commitment, while terrifying, might just forge a path of mutual honesty and trust. Let's plan a visit to your school next week, then. I'll be right there with you to confront whatever's going on. How does that sound? Really? Jake's eyes widened, incredulity mixing with relief. Really? And after that, we'll go to that new arcade. I've heard it's amazing. Henry replied, allowing his excitement to show, realizing he was claiming his role, braving the tumult of emotions in the process. With this renewed focus, a question loomed. Was he equipped to handle the storm waiting for them at school? As Jake's hopeful gaze met his, Henry felt a swell of determination. He was not just advocating for his son. He was challenging himself to confront his own fears, rooted in guilt and regret. That night marked a pivotal moment in their journey, a moment to awake buried pieces of himself, all while cultivating an environment where vulnerability could exist without judgment. How much deeper would this journey take them? What other confrontations awaited as they began rewriting their relationship? There was no telling how many layers of truth truly existed. He had only scratched the surface. The following days leading to the school visit felt kaleidoscopic for Henry. With each sunrise, he was wrapped in a world of swirling emotions and changing commitments. He could no longer ignore the prickling anxiety that accompanied such decisions. He felt unprepared yet aware that growth awaited on this daunting horizon. As he sat at his kitchen table, the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the scattered papers and unfinished reports of his work as an architect. Yet today, the designs he usually studied bore no allure. Instead, he caught himself glancing at Jake's baseball cap hanging by the door. A quiet reminder of their recent conversation and their mutual endeavor to share their worlds. It was emblematic of the change he sought. He reached for his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. The school's office number loomed large, wrapping his mind in self-doubt and a cascade of what-ifs. What if he embarrassed himself in front of the teachers? What if Jake's peers saw him as the inept father he feared he was? He inhaled and exhaled slowly, battling rising trepidation. Just like a structural blueprint could collapse under strain, so too could his resolve if he dared not confront his own fears. "All right, focus," he murmured to himself. "This isn't just about showing up. It's about being present for Jake." With resolve, Henry dialed the number and confirmed their visit, the voice on the other end pleasantly unassuming. Yet, as he hung up the call, the reality of his decision rippled through him like a shockwave. Stepping into Jake's world of struggles could reveal more than just the dark corridors of school. It might lead him deep within his son's heart, a territory he had often skirted. That evening he found himself watching as Jake immersed himself in a game of video soccer, laughter bubbling between excited exclamations. Henry studied his son's expressive focus and self-assuredness, contrasting sharply with the vulnerabilities Jake had revealed just days before. It dawned on him that this agility in the virtual world mirrored Jake's tangible challenges at school. A kind of bravery Henry struggled to encapsulate. "Hey, Jake?" Henry began tentatively, earning a distracted nod as his son maneuvered an on-screen character to victory. "You know, I really admire how you play. It takes confidence to stay focused like that." Jake paused the game and looked over, surprise flashing across his features. "Thanks, Dad. I guess I just like it." "I wish I could channel some of that confidence for tomorrow," Henry confessed, laying bare the hesitance creeping within him. "Why? You're going to be there to back me up, remember?" Jake's faith rang true and vibrant through the air, as if he were a life raft of reassurance. In that moment, Henry realized the profound parallel of supporting Jake's journey as he supported his own. It became clear that confronting Jake's bullies wouldn't just be about allowing them to see his strength. It was about finding the courage to own his failures and triumphs as a father. Jake's growth relied on Henry's willingness to demonstrate vulnerability in their shared battle. That night, as he prepared for bed, Henry took one last contemplative look at the designs strewn across his work desk. Tomorrow would not be a mere visit. It was a canvas on which to paint a new dynamic with Jake, a blueprint for transformation built on strength, courage, and the authenticity they had forged. But was he ready to tackle not only the bullies outside, but the internal dialogues of guilt and regret that echoed loudly in his own mind? As dawn approached, questions continued to swirl in his thoughts, mingling with newfound anticipation of forging this deeper connection. In a world where confrontation lurked just beyond the classroom door, what hidden revelations would arise when they stepped into the fray together? Would both father and son emerge from this trial forged anew, or would fractures reveal themselves? The tension hung dynamically in the air, promising an unpredictable day ahead. Henry stood at the threshold of his son's school, heart racing with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. This was a pivotal moment. Not merely a visit for Jake, but a full-circle realization of how far they had come. Just days ago, they had been bound by expectations and misunderstandings. Yet here they were ready to embrace the vulnerability that had once seemed unbearable. When Jake arrived at the school, his jovial demeanor served as a balm against Henry's nervous energy. Together they ventured beyond the safety of familiarity into uncharted territory, the hallways carrying the weight of unvoiced fears and resolute hopes. It was a chance for reconciliation and growth for both father and son. "Are you ready for this?" Henry asked, his voice a touch unsteady, uncertainty peppering the air. "Yeah, I mean, it's just school, right?" Jake shrugged, though Henry could sense the tension in his son's posture. As they approached the office to meet authority figures who could assist in navigating Jake's bullying, Henry reflected on how this was no longer just about it being a fight for Jake. Rather, it was a mutual journey toward growth and understanding, a concerted effort to break free from the chains of expectation. "Remember what we talked about?" Henry questioned, seeking assurance. "We're in this together, okay? You don't have to pretend to be strong for me. Just be yourself." Jake nodded, newfound resolve flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, I want to speak up too. I'm tired of just hiding." Taking the plunge, they entered the office where the school counselor greeted them with a warm smile. Together they laid out the events surrounding the bullying. Henry felt a sense of empowerment wash over him as they articulated the issues, not just as a father intervening for his son, but as a partner supporting Jake's voice. The school staff listened attentively, taking notes and discussing action plans aimed at confronting the bullying. Henry felt a palpable shift. They weren't merely addressing Jake's challenges. They were advocating for his right to feel safe and heard. As they concluded the meeting, Henry turned to Jake, whose face was lit with a blend of relief and pride. "You did great, son," he praised, feeling a swell of admiration for Jake's newfound courage. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." Jake's grateful smile radiated warmth, solidifying a bond forged in vulnerability. Yet, this was only the beginning. As they left the office, Henry realized he had vanquished the ghosts of his past, the fear of exposure and the weight of his expectations. The lessons learned from the uncharted feelings had empowered him to shift his relationship with Jake, and more importantly, with himself. He understood that embracing vulnerability had reshaped the contours of who he was, allowing him to connect with his son on a level adorned with authenticity. On their way home, Henry felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment rise within him. He shared stories of his own struggles with peers in his youth, peeling back layers that had long felt like armor. Jake listened, captivated, realizing he was not alone in his battles. Their shared vulnerabilities connected them deeper than tradition or authority ever could. "Doing this together feels different," Jake remarked, a glimmer of realization sparkling in his eyes. "Like we're actually a team now." "Exactly," Henry replied, pride swelling in his heart. "The future isn't about me being strong alone. It's about us facing life together." As they approached their home, the past felt distant, almost irrelevant against the vibrant conversations they had dismantled. They would face challenges anew, no longer grappling with silence but buoyed by shared understanding and commitment. In that moment, Henry recognized the full scope of his transformation. He had learned that true strength resided in vulnerability, and it throbbed in the pulse of every honest dialogue exchanged. He took a deep breath, the weight of years lifting away as he acknowledged his growth. This journey would not be devoid of difficulties ahead, but the foundation they had fortified through vulnerability ignited hope at every crossroad. Henry had reevaluated himself as a father and an individual. He was no longer bound by rigid ideals, but liberated by openness and connection. As they stepped into their home, laughter echoed in the familiar walls that now felt renewed, vibrant, and alive. A canvas ready to be painted with honesty and courage. "Hey, Dad," Jake said as they entered. "What's next?" Henry smiled, his heart swelling with justified pride. "Well, I thought we could dive into that video game together this weekend. Who knows, maybe we'll uncover a new champion along the way." "Yes!" Jake exclaimed, his enthusiasm infectious. As Henry watched Jake's excitement ripple through the air, he finally recognized his own triumph. He had not only embraced change, he had conquered the fear of failing in his role as a father. In reanimating his connection with Jake, he had established a genuine partnership, a unique evolution grounded in authenticity. Embracing vulnerability had carved new paths, transforming not only their relationship but also who he was. Together they would take on whatever life threw at them, fortified by an unbreakable bond of trust. Now, as they stood illuminated by the golden glow of the setting sun, Henry felt a profound sense of closure. He was ready to face anything, equipped with courage and the power of understanding. Their journey was just beginning, but a bright horizon stretched before them, a testament to the strength that lay in their shared hearts. Now I need you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment with your reactions and theories about how you think Henry and Jake's journey will evolve. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait, even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.